My name is Jordan Blake, and the night I got lost changed the entire direction of my life. It started as a simple road trip, nothing fancy, just a weekend getaway from the chaos of my 9 to 5 job in Raleigh, North Carolina. I needed a break from spreadsheets, deadlines, and microwave dinners. So I packed my car, loaded my Spotify playlist, and headed west toward the Blue Ridge Mountains. I had a cabin booked, a book to read, and no plans to speak to another soul for 2 days. But life, as it does, had other ideas. I left late. Work ran over, traffic was worse than expected, and I was already behind schedule when I hit the mountain roads. Nightfall came quickly. The sky turned ink black, and the GPS on my phone started glitching somewhere between nowhere and lost. Then it happened. No signal. I was in the middle of dense woods, winding roads with no streetlights, and a GPS that now read, "Searching for satellites." I pulled over, tried restarting the app. Nothing. Checked the printed directions I'd stuffed in the glove box just in case. Water damaged. Illegible. Great. I took a deep breath and reminded myself, this is fine. It's just a detour, a wrong turn. I'd find my way eventually. Then my headlights caught something up ahead. It was a small wooden sign, barely visible in the dark. Maple Hollow, 1 mile ahead. I hadn't seen that name on any maps, but at that point, I just needed a place to ask for directions, or at least get my bearings. So I turned onto the gravel path and drove slowly, the trees growing taller, denser, quieter. Eventually, the road opened up into a clearing. A few small cabins, a fire pit, a trailhead sign, and a person. She looked about my age, mid-20s, wearing hiking gear and holding a lantern. She turned when she saw my car, surprised but not alarmed. "Hey," she said. "Lost?" I rolled down my window. Big time. Her name was Riley Foster, and she was a volunteer coordinator for a conservation group that used Maple Hollow as a weekend retreat for environmental projects. Reforestation, wildlife tracking, trail clearing. "Not many people find this place by accident," she said with a half smile. I explained my situation: cabin booking, lost GPS, printed directions that had turned to soup. She offered me a place to crash for the night in an empty bunkhouse and said someone with a better signal would be back in the morning to help me find my route. It wasn't what I'd planned, but at that point, I was grateful for a roof. That night, over a campfire, Riley told me about the work they did. She spoke with passion about the endangered birds they were tracking, about the soil testing, the local ecosystems. Her eyes lit up when she described how a group of volunteers had found an abandoned mining trail the week before, something not even the locals knew existed. She showed me maps, wildlife prints, and journals that recorded what they were learning. I asked, "Why do you do all this?" She looked at the fire. "Because it matters. And because when you're out here, you remember what being alive feels like." The next morning, the group's leader arrived, a man named Grant, who reminded me of every wise outdoorsman in every nature documentary ever. He offered to guide me back to the main road, but before we left, he said, "You're welcome to stay today. We're checking out that old mining trail Riley mentioned. Could use an extra set of hands." I glanced at my car, then back at the woods. Something in me didn't want to leave just yet. So I said, "Why not?" What we found that day was nothing short of incredible. We followed a barely there path through undergrowth and dense trees. Riley led the way, reading topographic lines and old records like a guide born for it. And then we saw it. a collapsed entrance to what had once been a mining outpost. Hidden for decades, nature had taken most of it back, but remnants were still there. Rail lines, broken lanterns, even hand tools with initials carved into them. Grant knelt beside one of the tools. This is turn-of-the-century stuff. Could be an old silver prospecting site. They documented everything, carefully, respectfully. I watched in awe, not because of the history, but because of the purpose everyone moved with. They weren't just discovering something old, they were protecting something forgotten. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was wasting my days. I stayed the rest of the weekend, helped clean up the trail, took notes, asked a million questions. When I left Sunday evening, with working GPS and clearer directions, I was already thinking about coming back. 6 months later, I did more than that. I left my job, applied for a nonprofit internship with the conservation group, moved into a small apartment near Maple Hollow. Riley and I became close friends, and later, more than friends. I spent the next year learning the land, helping schools build nature programs, and working with local parks on preservation efforts. And it all started with one wrong turn. Today, I still live here, still work in the woods, still tell people the story of how I got lost and found something huge. Not a treasure, not a secret, but something better. A life with purpose.